Hi there, I'm Lenora. And this is the story of how my father sold the house I inherited and said the money was for my brother's vacation. I wish that was the worst part. But it wasn't just a house, it was my grandmother's legacy. And they took it, quietly, legally, like I never mattered. They forged my signature, spread lies about my mental health, turned the whole family against me. And for what? A cruise? You ever wonder how far your own family would go? Just to shut you up? Yeah, so did I. Stay with me, because it only got worse from there. I wasn't expecting anything unusual that Thursday. I left work just before 6, the sky still damp from an earlier drizzle, the air cool enough to bring out that early spring bite. The drive through Crescent Hill was something I usually looked forward to, a calming route, lined with trees just beginning to bloom. I hadn't been back to Grandma Dolores's house in weeks. Life had been busy, but that evening, something pulled me there. I didn't even have to park to feel it. There were 2 cars in the driveway, a black SUV and a silver sedan, neither of which belonged to anyone I knew. At first, I thought maybe a contractor had stopped by, maybe a maintenance check my dad had arranged. That would have been weird, sure, but not impossible. Still, something about the porch light being on and the faint glow from the living room window made my stomach turn. I stepped out, heart beating faster than it should have. As I approached the front steps, the door opened, just like that. A woman in her 30s stood there, holding a wine glass, barefoot, wearing a hoodie that read, University of Michigan. She smiled, hesitant. "Can I help you?" she asked. I blinked. I'm sorry, I think I'm in the wrong place." Then a man appeared behind her, casually wrapping an arm around her waist. "You lost or something?" he asked. "No, this is my grandmother's house. My voice cracked, disbelief crawling up my spine. "Who are you?" The woman let out a short, nervous laugh. "Oh, we bought this place last month. From the previous owner? I think his name was Lester?" I felt my blood drop straight to my shoes. Lester, my father. No, that's not possible," I said, stepping back. "That house was left to me. It's not for sale. I never listed it." The man tilted his head. "We bought it legally. I mean, it's already gone through escrow and everything. We've been living here for 3 weeks." I didn't answer. My mouth had gone dry. My eyes scanned the front porch. Grandma's planter box was gone. The rocking chair, too. Even the brass door knocker with the engraved D for Dolores had been replaced with some cheap Target-looking ring. I turned around and walked off without another word. Got into my car. I must have sat there 10 full minutes before I could even think clearly. I checked my email, my phone, scanned my messages, my spam folder. Nothing. No notice of a sale, no inquiry, no real estate alerts, no closing documents, no consent. And no one, not a soul, had asked for my permission, because they knew I wouldn't give it. As I drove, muscle memory took over. My thoughts were a storm of fragmented outrage. This had to be some mistake. It had to be. But I knew my father, and I knew the kind of games he played when it came to money and power. I ended up on River Road, not even sure how I got there. I pulled over into one of those old parking lots near the riverfront and stared out across the Ohio. The wind carried the smell of wet earth and pollen, and my grandmother's voice, steady, firm, always soft but never weak, played on a loop in my head. "This house is yours now, Lenora. Don't let them tell you otherwise." 6 months ago, some developer had offered me a ridiculous sum to turn the property into a short-term rental. I declined without a second thought. That house was more than wood and plaster. It was where I learned to bake my first pie, where I cried in the closet after my first heartbreak, where I found shelter when my father's indifference became too heavy to carry. I didn't need the money. I needed the connection. That's why I kept it. That's why I made sure the taxes were paid on time, the lawn mowed, the pipes winterized. I hadn't moved in because I had my apartment downtown, but I visited often. I cleaned, I sat in Grandma's old reading chair. I lit candles on her birthday. That house was sacred to me. So who the hell gave my father the right to sell it? As I sat behind the wheel, knuckles white on the steering wheel, I knew this wasn't a mix-up. It wasn't one of those oops paperwork glitch kind of things. This was deliberate. I wasn't sure how he pulled it off, But I was going to find out, and once I did, there'd be hell to pay. This wasn't just a house. This was theft. This was betrayal. And this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. I didn't drive home. I couldn't. My apartment felt too sterile for the storm that was building inside me. Instead, I pulled into a parking lot near the law office where Sasha worked. Of course, it was well past business hours, but just seeing the familiar building reminded me I had options. I had people who could help me make sense of this mess. Still, I wasn't ready to call anyone. Not yet. I needed to see the face behind this betrayal. So I turned the car around and headed straight to my parents' house. The sky had darkened by the time I reached the edge of the neighborhood I grew up in. Their porch light was on, the same yellow-tinted bulb that flickered for years and still hadn't been replaced. I parked at the curb and took a moment. My palms were sweaty, but I didn't feel nervous. I felt sharp, focused, like my entire body had narrowed into one mission. I rang the bell twice. No answer. I knocked. Still nothing. Then the door creaked open. Not my mother, not my father. Keaton. He stood barefoot in basketball shorts and a wrinkled hoodie, phone in hand, earbuds in, completely unbothered. Typical. "Oh," he said, glancing at me like I'd interrupted a TikTok scroll. "Hey." I didn't move. "Where's Dad?" He shrugged. "Out. Mom too." "I need to talk to them," I said flatly. He yawned, stretched, then turned to walk back inside like I wasn't even there. I stepped into the house and shut the door behind me. "Did you know?" I asked. Keaton flopped onto the couch, pulled his phone up, and replied without looking at me. "Know what?" "That Dad sold Grandma's house, the one she left to me." A smirk crept onto his face. "Oh, that. Yeah, he mentioned something about it. Said it helped cover my Cancun trip." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He tossed his phone on the coffee table like this was just another lazy Wednesday. "What? You weren't using it? Seemed like a waste just sitting there." The words hit me like a slap. "It wasn't a vacation fund, Keaton. It was my inheritance, my home." He waved a dismissive hand. "Don't be dramatic. You've got your own place. I'm the one who's been stressed lately. I needed the break." "You've never worked a day in your life," I snapped. "I'm building a brand," he said, puffing out his chest slightly. "You wouldn't understand. It's about presence and visibility now. It's digital real estate." "That house was real estate," I hissed. He rolled his eyes. "God, Lenora, always so serious." There was a beat of silence, and then, without shame, he added, "Besides, Dad said you didn't care, that you weren't attached to it." That was the moment something shifted inside me. The air felt colder. My spine stiffened. I took a slow breath and said, "Get him on the phone." Keaton laughed. "He's not going to talk to you right now. They're having dinner with the Bradleys." "Then I'll wait." "I wouldn't bother. You're making this a bigger deal than it is." I didn't answer him. I sat on the armchair across from him and crossed my legs. Silence settled between us like smoke, and I watched him, my brother, the golden boy, the professional moocher, the human black hole of accountability, scroll through his phone, completely unbothered by the theft he benefited from. Minutes passed. Then the door opened again. My parents stepped in, mid-conversation, laughing at something, wine on their breath. The moment my mother saw me, her smile dropped. My father, however, didn't flinch. "Lenora," he said casually, "didn't expect to see you tonight." "I didn't expect to find strangers living in my house." He let out a short sigh. "Here we go." "What did you do?" I asked. "How did you even have access to the deed?" "I had to make a decision," he said, stepping into the kitchen to pour himself a drink. "You were never going to use that house. It was sitting there, collecting dust. Meanwhile, your brother needed a break, a real mental reset. Cancun was good for him." "You sold my inheritance," I said, each word like a strike of lightning. "For a vacation. You have your own place. You make good money. It's not like you needed the extra property." My mother stood near the stairs, hands clasped, saying nothing. "Did you forge my signature?" I demanded. He took a sip of his drink and looked me dead in the eye. "It's not important how the paperwork went through. What matters is that it's done. The buyers are happy, Keaton's refreshed, and honestly, you should consider letting this go." I stared at him, feeling the bile rise in my throat. Let it go? I said slowly. He leaned against the counter, completely at ease. Sometimes in a family, people need to make sacrifices. You're doing well, Lenora. Be proud of that. You don't need to hold on to the past. My mother finally spoke. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just made a decision we thought was best. For who? I snapped. For you? For Keaton? Certainly not for me. My father's jaw tightened. Watch your tone. You stole from me, I said coldly. You're being ungrateful, he snapped back. We've given you everything. You gave me nothing but trauma and distance. Grandma gave me that house. You just took it. He slammed his glass down. Don't test me, Lenora. I won't tolerate disrespect in my own house. I stepped closer. And I won't tolerate theft in my family. You think this ends here? He laughed dryly. What are you going to do? Call a lawyer? I didn't answer. Because I already knew who I was calling in the morning. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling as shadows from passing headlights crawled across it like ghosts. Every word my father said replayed in my head, not just the ones from tonight, but all the gaslighting phrases I had heard since childhood. You're overreacting. You're too sensitive. You don't see the big picture. His tone had always been confident, calm even when he was wrong, like he believed the sheer force of his voice would overwrite the facts. But not this time. At dawn, I got up, poured myself a cup of coffee, and pulled the fireproof box from the top of my closet. It was dusty, heavy, and packed with old records, documents Grandma had left me, along with copies of her will, property deeds, and a small velvet pouch containing her wedding ring. I sat cross-legged on the living room floor, papers spread around me like pieces of a broken map. I found the house deed within minutes. I knew it by heart. Her name, Dolores Jensen, clean and looped at the top. My name was listed in the will as the sole heir to the property. And then, my breath caught. I spotted something else. A quitclaim deed, filed less than 3 months ago and signed supposedly by me. I stared at the signature. It looked familiar, but it wasn't mine. The slant was off. The L in Lenora was curved differently. The N was too clean. I always left mine slightly open. The more I studied it, the colder my chest became. I hadn't signed that. I would never have signed that. By the time the sun was fully up, I was on the phone with Sasha. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, stranger, you're up early. I need a legal favor. Now. Her tone shifted immediately. What's going on? I think my father forged my signature and sold my house. I didn't even need to say more. Sasha told me to come in. We met at her office on East Market just after 9. The air outside was brisk, and I clutched the manila folder against my chest like a shield. Inside, Sasha looked exactly as she always had, sharp-eyed, calm, too smart to be surprised by anything. She cleared her schedule and locked the door behind me. I laid everything out on her desk. She scanned the documents quickly, but carefully. When she reached the signature on the quitclaim deed, she paused, tapped her nail on the paper, and looked up at me. This is forged. There it was. No hesitation, no ambiguity. I felt like my lungs deflated. Are you sure? She angled the paper toward me. See this loop in the L? It's different from the one on your license. Also, Kentucky requires signatures to be witnessed or notarized. There's no notary seal here, just a typed name. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, not embarrassment, but fury. She flipped through a few more pages, then frowned. You said this isn't the first time? I nodded. Years ago, my aunt, my grandma's sister, there was some drama after she passed. Something about her property being transferred without full family consent. My mom always swept it under the rug, but I remember hearing Lester's name thrown around. Sasha leaned back in her chair. You think he did it back then, too? I think he has a pattern. She rubbed her temple. Lenora, this could get messy, but it's actionable. If that signature's fake, and you never authorized this sale, we're looking at fraud. Real estate fraud. Can we undo the sale? I asked. Possibly, she said. It's going to depend on the good faith of the buyers. But we can absolutely go after your father. You'd have a civil case, maybe even a criminal one. My hands trembled slightly as I placed them on her desk. I don't care how messy it gets. I want to do this. Her expression softened. Are you ready to drag your dad into court? I met her eyes. He dragged me there first. There was silence between us for a moment. Then Sasha nodded. All right, I'll start with a formal demand. If he ignores it, we file. I exhaled, the air shaky as it left my chest. Thank you. She gathered the papers, then stood. He wanted you to feel powerless, Lenora. You're not, and you never were. I left the office feeling both empty and electric, like a wire had finally been stripped of insulation and was now sparking at both ends. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It had a paper trail. Proof. Evidence that my father didn't just ignore my rights, he erased me entirely from the picture. As I walked back to my car, I passed a bakery where I used to stop with Grandma after doctor appointments. The window was fogged with steam. The scent of cinnamon and brown sugar wafted out as a woman opened the door. For a moment I stood there, remembering the last time Grandma had hugged me on that very sidewalk. You're the only one in this family who sees clearly, baby, she had said. They'll hate you for it, but never stop looking. I got in my car and drove away, my jaw set. My father wanted to pretend I didn't matter. Now he was going to find out what it feels like to be seen as nothing. I had just pulled into my apartment garage when my phone lit up. Mom flashed across the screen. I stared at it, thumb hovering. I hadn't heard from her since that night at the house. Somehow, I already knew this wouldn't be a call to apologize. I answered anyway. Lenora? She said, her voice thin, almost hoarse. I heard you're speaking to lawyers? It wasn't a question. She already knew. Her voice cracked like she was holding back emotion, but I couldn't tell if it was shame, panic, or plain manipulation. I am, I said. I have to. There was a long pause. Sweetheart, don't do this. Please, you're going to tear this family apart. A bitter laugh escaped my throat. No, Mom. Dad already did that when he sold my house behind my back. She didn't respond right away. I could hear her shifting, maybe walking through the house, maybe pacing. I know you're angry, but you're successful, baby. You've got a good career. No children depending on you, no husband to answer to. Keaton, he's not as fortunate. I gripped the phone tighter. And that gives him a pass to steal from me? He needed a break, she said softly. You saw how burnt out he was. That trip gave him life again. I stared at my windshield, rain starting to speckle the glass. You let Dad take my inheritance. For a vacation. You didn't need that house, she insisted, her voice rising just slightly. It was just sitting there, empty, while your brother, he's been going through so much. I interrupted sharp. Don't make this about Keaton. This is about Dad forging my name. That's illegal. Lenora, listen to yourself, she snapped, more forceful now. You're talking about putting your own father in court. Yes, I said, because he committed fraud. Another pause. Then the voice softened again. Can we handle this quietly, please? Just for the family's sake. The way she said it, like I was being unreasonable for wanting justice, boiled something deep inside me. It wasn't new. My mother had always been afraid of scandal, allergic to confrontation. I'd seen her twist herself into knots to preserve appearances. And suddenly I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. I was 16, coming home from school to find her hunched over the kitchen table, bills stacked like a fortress around her. She was crying into her hands. We were behind on the mortgage. She hadn't told Dad yet. She was too scared. The power had been shut off that morning. She didn't see me. I just stood there, frozen in the hallway. 2 months later, she married Lester, the man who could fix things. But he didn't fix her. He trained her to survive in silence. That fear of being broke, being seen as weak, still clung to her voice now, but I wasn't 16 anymore, and I wasn't going to play along with that silence. Mom, I said carefully, staying quiet isn't saving the family. It's just letting the worst people in it win. I'm not picking sides, she whispered. You already did, I said, when you stayed quiet. She exhaled shakily. If this gets out, people will talk. What will the church think? What about your father's reputation? I almost laughed. You're worried about Dad's reputation? I'm worried about all of us, she snapped. The Jensens have always been respected in this community. Don't throw that away." "I didn't throw anything," I replied. "But if he won't own what he did, then he's going to face the consequences." Her tone grew icy. "So that's it? You're just going to take your own father to court?" "No," I said, calm and cold. "I'm giving him one last chance to come clean. You tell him that. You tell him to fix this. If not, this doesn't stay in the family." The silence on the other end stretched for seconds that felt like hours. She didn't hang up, she just went quiet, and that silence told me everything. The silence on the line from my mother haunted me for days. But it wasn't the last I heard from the family. 3 mornings later, I was sipping coffee on my balcony when my phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Ruth. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. "I hope you're taking your meds this time, honey. Stress never was your strong suit." I stared at the message. No hi, no how are you, just that. A poisoned dart wrapped in sugar. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she meant to text someone else. But then I saw the second message come in. "You know your father's just trying to protect what's left of this family. Maybe don't turn everything into a courtroom drama?" My chest tightened. That wasn't just casual concern. That was character assassination, and it was starting to spread. By noon, I'd received 3 more messages from cousins I hadn't heard from in years. One asked if I was still seeing that therapist. Another said something about not making a scene again like in 06. The comments were veiled but pointed. I checked Facebook, something I rarely did anymore, and my stomach flipped. A vague post from a family member. "When someone you love struggles with mental health, sometimes you have to let go for your own sanity. Prayers up." The comments underneath weren't even subtle. My name was tagged in one. "Hope Lenora finds peace. She's been spiraling." What the hell was going on? I called Sasha immediately. "They're trying to discredit me," I said. "They're trying to make me look unstable." She didn't sound surprised. "That's textbook. If they can't silence you, they'll try to make people stop listening." "But how would they even know about my therapy sessions? I never talked about them." There was a beat of silence on her end. Then, "Did you ever share any of that with your dad, even years ago?" I blinked. "Yeah, briefly. Back when I first moved out. I needed someone to co-sign an insurance claim, and he offered to help. I had to sign a temporary release of medical info for the paperwork. And he kept it," she said flatly. "That's how." Sasha was already clicking away in the background, looking up statutes. Depending on how he accessed it and what he's sharing, this could border on HIPAA violations. At the very least, defamation. "He's using my past as ammunition," I whispered. "Then we use his weapon against him," she replied. "Document everything, every text, every post, every message. Screenshot them all. I'll draft cease and desist notices tonight." That afternoon, I started compiling evidence. A digital paper trail of smears, half-truths, and subtle jabs that painted me as unstable, volatile, emotional. A dangerous word when used against a woman trying to stand her ground. It wasn't just gossip. It was strategic sabotage. The part that stung most wasn't that people believed it. It was that so many were willing to believe it. Because it was easier to think of me as unwell than to accept that my father, Mr. Jensen, the respectable local businessman, had committed fraud against his own daughter. Around sunset, I opened my laptop and typed an email. Just one line in the subject field. "Your move determines mine." In the body, I kept it simple, surgical. "You've made your point, I've made mine. But if you continue to violate my privacy, share medical history, or manipulate our family against me, I will escalate this publicly and legally. This ends now, or it escalates where you don't want it to go." I didn't bother to sign it with love. I hit send. Then I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood there staring out at the skyline, waiting. Not for his reply, but for the next play. Because I knew my father. He wouldn't take the warning. He'd take it as a challenge. And I was right. He didn't reply. But by the end of the week, I found out he'd made another move, and this time, I wasn't alone. 3 days passed without a word from my father. Not a call, not a text, not even one of his classic guilt-laced voicemails. I thought silence would be the worst part, until someone knocked on my door Saturday morning. I had barely slept the night before, my brain running laps around court filings and cease and desist drafts. So when I opened the door in my oversized tee and wool socks, I wasn't expecting to find Camille Torrance standing there, her eyes rimmed red and a thick folder clutched in her hands like it was radioactive. "I'm sorry to just show up like this," she said quickly. "I didn't know who else to talk to." I stepped aside without a word and motioned her in. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. She dropped the folder on my kitchen counter and opened it. "We were scammed too," she said. "Your father. He lied to us." I raised an eyebrow and approached slowly, thumbing through the documents she spread out. Closing disclosures, bank transfers, even her inspection summary. Camille pointed to one line. "Seller attests full legal authority to transfer property." I asked him twice, once in person, once over email, if there were any claims, liens, or complications. She said. He told me it was clean, that the house belonged to him entirely. I stared at the signature at the bottom. Lester Jensen. My heart pounded against my ribs. "He rushed the deal," she added. "Said another buyer was interested. Pressured us to sign before the weekend or risk losing it." My stomach twisted. That was classic Lester. Pressure, posture, and polish. I flipped to the page with my forged signature. Still there, still neat, still not mine. "This isn't just family drama anymore," I said, voice low. "It's fraud. And now you're involved." Camille exhaled shakily. "I thought we were just unlucky, but when I saw the cease and desist thing posted online, and your name..." I started putting pieces together. "I think he conned both of us." I nodded. "You're not wrong." That afternoon, Camille and I sat across from Sasha in her office. Sasha, always composed, reviewed the folder with clinical precision, flipping each page like a scalpel slicing toward the truth. "This gives us real weight," she finally said. "Multiple victims, a pattern of misrepresentation, forged signatures. This is no longer a family dispute. It's a legal assault case waiting to happen." Camille leaned forward. "Will I lose the house?" "There's a strong chance the sale gets voided," Sasha replied. "But that means restitution, damages, possibly even criminal inquiry depending on how far your father went." I watched Camille absorb that with the kind of numbness I knew too well. "We'll handle it together," I told her. "He played both of us. We fight back together." Later, over lunch in a quiet cafe off Market Street, Sasha surprised me. "He almost broke me once," she said suddenly, stirring her tea but not drinking it. I looked up. "Your ex?" She shook her head. "No, a client, powerful family. Years ago I handled an inheritance case. Young woman's uncle cut her out of a trust. Her relatives threatened me with bar complaints, fake reviews, smear letters. I backed off. I was younger. Didn't have the backbone I do now." She looked me square in the eyes. "But this time I'm not backing off." For the first time in days, I felt something inside me shift. Not fear, not fatigue, but the faint spark of something stronger. I wasn't fighting this alone anymore. That evening, back in Sasha's office, the three of us sat side by side while she drafted the preliminary complaint. The language was clear, sharp, and blisteringly professional. Misrepresentation, forgery, emotional distress, breach of trust. We reviewed every paragraph like it was a loaded weapon, and when Sasha hit print, I signed my name on that first page without hesitation. Camille followed. Then Sasha stamped the documents and said, "We file Monday." Outside, dusk had settled over the city. Streetlights flickered on one by one. Somewhere in the distance, church bells marked 7 o'clock. It was quiet. But inside me, something had roared back to life. We were done with warnings. Let the fight begin. Monday morning, I woke up to my name in a headline. I hadn't even brushed my teeth when Sasha called. "Check the Courier-Journal," she said. "Page 2. I didn't have a physical copy, but I didn't need one. Someone had already tagged me in a photo on Facebook. The headline sat in stark black letters, framed by a grainy photo of the house that used to be mine. Daughter and homebuyer file suit against local businessman. Fraud allegations rock prominent Jensen family. I clicked the article and skimmed quickly. They had details. Too many details. My name, Camille's name, the forged signature, the house value. Even a quote from someone close to the family about how sad it is to see private matters dragged into court. I leaned against the counter, my phone trembling in my hand. They didn't get this from me, I told Sasha. I didn't think so, but somebody leaked it. Maybe Lester. Maybe someone else trying to stir the pot. By noon, it was trending on the local news app. People from high school I hadn't heard from in a decade started liking my LinkedIn. A guy I dated freshman year of college messaged, "Damn, you made the paper." I closed the app. That same day, Camille texted, "I've already had 2 clients cancel on me. They said they didn't want the drama." And then, an email from my mom, short, formal, and devastating. Subject, termination notice body. Viola Jensen is no longer employed at Oakhurst Assisted Living. We thank her for her service. No explanation, no press release, just done. I stared at the screen for what felt like a full minute before calling her. She didn't answer. An hour later, a message from my Aunt Linda came through on WhatsApp. "Whatever you're doing, stop. You're embarrassing this family. Your mom didn't deserve that." Another from Uncle Rob. "Grandma would be ashamed." That one hit harder than I expected. I texted Sasha. "Now the family's turning. Hard." Her reply came in seconds. "It means they're scared. Stay focused." I tried to. I really did. But then Keaton called. I was standing in line at Walgreens, buying toothpaste and ibuprofen, when his name lit up my screen. I answered with more curiosity than anger. "What do you want?" I said. "You happy now?" His voice was bitter. "Mom lost her job. The whole neighborhood's talking. And now the IRS is in my business." I froze. "What?" "They're auditing me. Said the funds used for the evocation were never documented properly. Something about a flagged wire transfer. My accounts are frozen, Lenora. I can't even buy gas." I didn't respond. He laughed darkly. "You think this is justice? You think making your whole family miserable makes you the good guy?" I inhaled sharply. "I didn't touch your accounts. I didn't call the IRS. Actions have consequences, Keaton. You got money that wasn't yours." "You think you're better than the rest of us?" he snapped. "You've always acted like you were." I let that hang in the air a second. "You should be asking why Dad gave you stolen money, not why I'm calling him out for it." He hung up. That night, I got an email from my father. No greeting, no sign-off, just 3 lines. "You wanted war. Now you have it. I'll see you in court." I stared at the screen until it dimmed from inactivity. Then I closed my laptop and stood at the window again, the city lights flickering across the skyline like warning flares. I thought of the silence in my mother's voice, the panic in Keaton's, the rage in my father's, and I felt no guilt, no regret, because I hadn't created this chaos. They had. I just stopped covering it up. I brewed a pot of coffee at midnight. My hands were steady, because I knew what was coming, and I was ready for it. The courtroom was cold, air conditioning turned too high, or maybe it was just my nerves pressing against my skin. I sat across from him, my father, Lester Jensen, in a slate gray suit, adjusting his cufflinks like he was attending a business luncheon, not a civil hearing over forged documents and stolen inheritance. He didn't look at me, not once, just whispered something to his lawyer and folded his hands like he had nothing to worry about. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a steady voice, took her seat and called the room to order. "This hearing is to address allegations of property fraud and wrongful transfer of ownership. Plaintiff, Lenora Jensen and Camille Torrance. Defendant, Lester Jensen." I barely registered the rest of her words. My hands were resting on my lap, but my fingers were curled into the fabric of my dress so tightly I thought I might rip it. The courtroom wasn't packed, but there were enough faces. A few local reporters sat in the back, pretending to scroll their phones. I recognized 2 distant cousins sitting near the aisle, probably just here for the gossip. Sasha opened with calm precision. She presented the timeline, showed the deed transfer, the signatures, the missing notifications. Camille nodded along from beside me, her expression carved from stone. Then it was time. Sasha stood and gestured toward a gray-haired man seated at the witness stand. "Your Honor, we call forensic handwriting expert Dr. Aaron Mullins to testify." He was soft-spoken, but authoritative. "The signature on the deed filed with the Louisville County Clerk's office is not consistent with Miss Lenora Jensen's verified handwriting samples," he said. "In fact, the line pressure, slant, spacing, and baseline alignment are highly irregular." The judge raised an eyebrow. Are you saying the signature is forged? Yes, Your Honor, he replied. It's a forgery, and not a sophisticated one. A murmur rippled across the room. I heard someone whisper, "Wow." Lester's attorney objected, claiming there wasn't enough foundation. The judge overruled him. The evidence was in, and it was irrefutable. My father still hadn't looked at me. During the recess, Sasha pulled me aside near the hallway just outside the courtroom. There's more, she said, handing me her phone. He tried to move his own house into a blind trust, filed the paperwork late last night. I blinked. He's trying to shield his assets? Exactly. Probably guessing he might lose and trying to keep something for himself. Can he do that? He tried, she said. But I anticipated the move. I filed a temporary injunction 2 days ago. The judge granted it this morning. His house is frozen. I let out a quiet, stunned breath. He has no way out. He's running out of road, she nodded. Back in the courtroom, Lester looked shaken for the first time. His lips were tight, his hands fidgeted, and when he finally glanced over at me, it wasn't rage anymore. It was contempt. Cold, bitter contempt. Like I was a stranger who dared cross into territory I didn't belong. But I met his gaze head on. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. He may have been the one who taught me to fear power, but now he was learning something else. What it feels like when power doesn't protect you anymore. The judge called the session back into order. There were no closing statements today, just one final declaration. This court will issue a formal ruling within 5 business days. Both parties will be notified. The room emptied slowly. Some people lingered to shake hands with lawyers. Others just watched us as if we were characters in some reality TV show. Camille touched my shoulder lightly. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't sure what okay even meant in this context. As we stepped outside, the sky was turning silver. Rain clouds were gathering, thick and low. Spring in Kentucky had its drama too. I checked my phone. A missed call from my mom. I didn't return it. We reached the parking lot, and Sasha turned to us. We did it. The hard part is done. Not the hardest, I said, but maybe the most important. Sasha nodded, understanding me without needing the rest explained. This wasn't just about a verdict. This was about rewriting what it meant to share blood with someone. This was about saying, I know what you did, and I will not let you get away with it. It rained the morning the verdict came down, not the kind of storm that rattled windows, but a soft, steady drizzle, as if the sky had finally decided to weep for all the damage done. I arrived at the courthouse early. Camille and Bryce were already there. Sasha showed up last, her briefcase dry despite the mist, hair pulled into a bun that meant she meant business. The courtroom was quieter this time. No reporters, no extended family, no whispered commentary, just the facts, the judge, and the truth that had taken months to drag into the light. Lester was already seated, flanked by his attorney. His face was unreadable, but the tremor in his left hand betrayed him. When the judge took her seat and began reading the ruling, I didn't breathe. I barely blinked. The court finds sufficient evidence of fraud in the execution of the property deed. My ears roared. Property ownership is hereby restored to the plaintiff, Lenora Jensen. The defendant is liable for damages, including emotional distress and costs incurred by the co-plaintiff Camille Torrance. The words landed like gavel strikes. Final, irreversible, just. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just closed my eyes for a moment and let the verdict settle deep in my bones. Justice doesn't feel like a parade. It feels like a silence that doesn't choke anymore. When I opened them, Lester was still staring forward, frozen. Viola sat 2 rows behind him, chin dipped low, eyes glassy. She didn't look at me, not once. Outside, the rain had lightened into a soft mist. The gray sky seemed brighter. Back at home, I collapsed onto the couch, not from exhaustion, but from release, the kind that comes after holding your breath for too long. 2 days later, Lester was ordered to list his own house for sale. The court demanded liquidation of assets to satisfy judgment costs. I didn't even blink when Sasha forwarded me the notice. That same week, Viola was quietly removed from the board of her community foundation. A friend of hers texted me, "I'm sorry things got this ugly." I didn't reply. Keaton, ever the victim in his own story, posted cryptic status updates about snakes in the grass and blood meaning nothing. Then he disappeared from Facebook entirely. Word was he'd moved in with a friend in Lexington while figuring things out. I didn't chase any of them. I had other places to be. Camille and Bryce moved out on a Sunday. She left me a handwritten note tucked inside the kitchen drawer. I hope this home brings you the peace it was meant to. It did. I walked through every room of the house that night, barefoot, lights dimmed, the scent of lemon oil still hanging in the air from the deep cleaning I'd done earlier. My grandmother's house, mine again, mine still. I put her portrait back over the mantel, lit a candle beneath it, and whispered, "It's done." 3 days later, a voicemail came through. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the voice was unmistakable. "Lenora," my mother said, her tone slow, unsure. "I don't expect you to answer. I just wanted you to know I didn't know what else to do. I'm sorry. For all of it." I listened to it twice, then I deleted it. Some things didn't need a reply. Some things weren't meant to be fixed. Instead, I poured my focus into the yard. I planted lavender near the fence line, reseeded the patchy grass, and ordered 2 new white rocking chairs for the porch. The house didn't just need repair, it needed rebirth, so did I. By summer, I had launched a small consulting side hustle, helping people navigate inheritance fraud and property disputes. Word of mouth brought in calls weekly. The work felt personal, purposeful. Sasha even joined on some cases. Healing wasn't instant. Some wounds ache even after they close. But there's a kind of strength that comes from surviving betrayal, from standing when no one thought you would. I stood, and I stayed standing. The final judgment arrived in the mail mid-June. Damages granted in full, deed reinstated, case closed. I framed the court letter, not out of pride, but as proof. Proof that what they tried to erase didn't disappear, that I didn't disappear. I stood on the porch that evening with coffee in hand, the sky painted in watercolor pinks and oranges, cicadas beginning their nightly hum. It was quiet except for the rustle of wind through the maple leaves. They didn't just lose a house. They lost the one person who might have forgiven them. And I found peace. Sometimes, standing up for yourself means standing alone first. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that silence doesn't keep the peace. It just protects the people who benefit from the chaos. I used to think that keeping quiet made me strong, that swallowing pain and pretending everything was fine was the adult thing to do. But real strength? It's calling out the wrong, even when it's your own family. It's drawing a line, not out of hate, but out of self-respect. So if you're watching this and you've been gaslit, dismissed, told to let it go for the sake of harmony, let me be the one to say it. You are not crazy. You are not selfish. And you are not alone. Justice isn't always clean. It doesn't always come wrapped in a bow. But sometimes it starts with a single decision to say, enough. And if this story touched something in you, maybe something you haven't said out loud yet, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, or just type 1 if this hit home for you. If you didn't like the video, I still want to hear from you. Let's talk about it. And if you want more true stories like this, stories about real people, real choices, and the messy beauty of finding your voice, then hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I've got more coming your way. Thanks for being here. Stay strong, stay honest, and never let anyone rewrite your worth.